So this is Anthony from UberCube. Before we get going, I actually want to mention the fact that UberCube will be at Ravenfest, a charity cube event on January the 31st, 2026. I will include all the information in the show notes, and we just look forward to come out and meet us. It'll be in Sanford, North Carolina. It's going to be a great time, a good day for Cube, and giving back to the community. But other than that, welcome to UberCube, the podcast we discuss all things Cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, a.k.a. UberBear, and today we are joined by the lovely...
It's Stu. Hi, Stu.
Hi. Yeah. Well, you're all lovely. Everyone's lovely.
Hi, man.
I wanted to be lovely.
You can be lovely too, Gavin.
Everyone's lovely.
Thank
yes.
you.
So
We're
first,
all lovely.
yes. Huge thanks and a huge welcome to yet another episode of UberCube with a wonderful guest. And I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome the one and only Mr. Gavin Verhey back to UberCube. First of all, huge thanks to agreeing to come on and hang out with us on the show. And just say hello. Tell us how you're doing.
Do I also get to be lovely?
Yes, you are lovely.
You
Yes,
lovely. We're all
absolutely.
we start out baseline
I'll agree
lovely.
to stay now. I'll agree to stay now. Yeah, thank you all very much. I'm glad to be back, and of course, always happy to talk Cube with y'all.
Nice.
Yeah, so our machinations go long. I talked to you at CubeCon. That was back, October 20-something. And then I was like, hey, Gavin, you're interested in coming back on the show again. Want to talk to you some more about Cube. Wanted to pick your brain, something you could share with current designers, veteran designers, and maybe future Cube designers, right? And, I mean, who else to actually get this from than an actual legit game designer, right? What else could you ask for? So listeners, buckle up. We're going to get into this, and we are short timing a little bit. Gavin's a busy individual, so
yes.
We're going to go this. So we will do something really fast. We will do our high-quality beverages for the show. We're going to short time here. Gavin, I'm predicting what you may or may not have, but what are you having to drink today?
I got water. I got a glass of water.
I knew it.
Nice.
You know me. We're recording during work hours, so.
High quality
Understood.
H2O. And then Stu and I, we're doing some Gizmo something.
Graham
smart.
Cracker Porter.
There we go.
All right, crack
easy
it.
peasy. Let's crack them open. Let's get past that. People like to hear the drinks.
All right, I've got to start this off. All right, we pre-gamed a little bit. All right, so I want to settle an argument that I see just happening over and over again, right? So, Gavin, you can see behind me, I have a couple of beautiful pieces of magic art over here. I'm assuming that you recognize both of these. Let's talk about this one over here, right? I'm assuming you can tell us. Mana Drain. Okay. Can you confirm the card that this art is from?
Oh, it's because of the name. You're debating the name.
Yes, that's exactly correct.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to report it's Necropotence.
Thank you. That's all I needed
It's
to
not
know.
Necropotence, and if you say that, you're just wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you. That's what we were talking about earlier.
We pre-gamed this, and I said, look, I see this so many times where people say, no, I've always called it necropotence, right? It's omnipotence, so surely it's got to be necropotence. And I say, no, it's necropotence. Like, surely you cannot be unironically thinking that it's necropotence. But I'm going to, with your permission, I'm going to capture that, and anytime this comes up again in the future, I'm going to post this, and that's the end of the argument.
Well,
so
how do
thank
we
you.
feel
Yeah,
about...
you can word it.
How do we feel
can
about
word a Gavin this time.
omnipotence
Yeah.
then? Omnipotence? Was it omnipotence?
Do you know tomato?
I feel like you're
tomato?
pronouncing the word wrong.
Yeah.
See, there you go. Yeah. Unironically. All right, Gavin, we actually asked you to be on because you designed a very unique and special cube for CubeCon 2025 that we actually wanted to talk about. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this cube, and it's not exclusive to the cube, but from a design perspective, I wanted to talk about cubes that capture an error, cubes that capture a vibe or a time period in Magic, as a general sub-theme to what we're talking about. So what was the cube that you had featured in the previous CubeCon 2025?
Yeah, so at a previous CubeCon, I played this cube that I really loved called Museum of Modern. I'm sure you guys have talked about it on the show before. I think it was a really cool cube. And I was like, this is such a cool way that it captured this era and time and place in Magic. And could you do that for other times and places? And I think by now a lot of folks have done it. But there's this kind of era of Magic that is a little more forgotten. That's when I started playing competitively. That's this early 2000s era. I kind of think of it as between broken blocks, right? It's between Urza block and between Mirrodin block. You have this string of sets where a lot of really unique decks are coming out, and it kind of builds a lot of the foundations for Magic history. And I wanted to build a cube for that era. So I thought about calling it, Museum of Boomer Standard or something like that, but I settled on the much more, that could be a lot of eras, I guess. So I settled on the much more straightforward Museum of 2000, 2003 Standard. It starts with Mercadian Masks, and it ends with Scourge, cutting off at Scourge because that's where the old card frame stops, so I thought that was about appropriate. And Masks are out of the Urza block, kind of rotating around the 7th edition set. And it's a real fun blast from the past. It was one of the most requested cubes at CubeCon this year, and I'm glad I got to bring it to life.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I actually have a similar project, but not similar. It's in the same vein. It's called the Black Parade. And what I have done is basically taken the downtrodden, the forgotten, and the damned, those cards that went into my binders. I just quoted a little bit of My Chemical Romance there. But I've taken cards that are no longer, air quotes, vintage viable, right? Or they're not looked upon with the same shine and gleam that they once had. And what I like, what you've captured here, and I think other curators can learn from this, is how to revitalize forgotten magic, right? Because this is like, when I looked at this cube, and I'll share this in the show notes, this is kitchen table magic at its finest, right? This is, I know you work for a certain company that designs these things, right? But there's got to be a piece of you that really loves, this is the heart of the cards at its finest, right? This is when magic, the spell slinging, you felt like a planeswalker. Am I wrong in these statements?
Well, I think just like music, what's the best music? Well, it's all the music that came out between the ages of 13 and 20 for you, right? And I feel like for me, a lot of my favorite time playing Magic was this era, as like I was playing competitively and growing up and playing. But I think if you ask someone who's like in their heyday right now, they'll be like, yeah, this is the best time of Magic. And so, so it goes. But for me, it's very nostalgic, and I really feel like, like very classic. The creatures are horrible. You're using your spells. Killed someone 20-0 the other day in this cube with a 3/1 flyer for 3, so it's a job done.
I think
with the downside.
I think you say that right. When I was looking at this, I did not play Magic at all during this period. I will say, like, this kind of predates my involvement in the game. But I looked at the list, and I was baffled by the number of cards, not just that I recognized, but that I had experience playing. And this was certainly cards through like Commander that I've played or cubes that I've played. So I think, going back with what you were saying with the whole power creep, there's got to be a bit of a lesson to be learned, that even though you look at this as kind of a historical like snapshot of Magic from back in the day, and going on what you said, Anthony, as far as like how Magic has progressed over the years, but there's still so much relevance to a lot of the cards that are in this list. One that I wanted to pick out specifically was Shadow Mage Infiltrator. I don't want to get too early into that, but that to me, that's a card from that period that, I don't know, unless you maybe got into Magic in the last 15 minutes, I feel like you should know what that card is. That's an iconic card because of, how good it is, and obviously because of the designer and the player that's on it, right? Like John Finkel, legendary, that to me is such an important part of the history.
So Gavin, you curated this list. Let me ask you a question. When you were competitively playing Magic, or any of these cards represent the type of decks that you were playing during this time? Is this the foundation of this idea? What were you jamming back then? You went to you're a pro player, weren't you, at one point?
Yeah, although not during, it was a little bit after this era. It was actually fittingly enough for Lorwyn Eclipsed. It was Lorwyn era is when I really started picking it up. It was a little before then, I guess, Ravnica era. So this cube was a little before my professional time playing on the Pro Tour, but I was still playing competitively. And the deck I really cut my teeth on and learned a lot of the fundamentals on and played in a lot of tournaments was Blue-Green Madness. I played the heck out of Blue-Green Madness with Wild Mongrels and Aqua Amoebas and Arrogant Worms and Basking Root Wallows, all that stuff. And so that is very much a well-supported archetype in this cube, and pretty darn strong as well, I would say. And one thing I love about these kind of museum cubes is, yes, you get the drafts where all the cards kind of sort into place, and the Blue-Green Madness guy ends up with all the Blue-Green Madness cards. Sure, that's fine, whatever. That happens every now and then. But also I love where you get to combine things in unique ways that you've never quite done before. And so in a previous draft, someone drafted a Teamer, a blue-red-green Madness deck with some weird red cards that didn't only go in that environment together, or kind of crossing environments a little bit. I'm playing cards from Scourge with cards from Invasion and cards from Odyssey and Onslaught to make this Madness deck. So it kind of spanned more than just the standard era. So big fan of that deck. I love drafting it in this cube, and there's a lot of variations of it you can draft, but I really like when people do even more unique things with it and find.
Well, I want to ask you a question about some of those cards. So you had your core And this translates to a lot of cube designers. This goes into Commander, right? They got their favorite Commander deck. I don't care. Pick your poison, right? Say we've got Ruhan or whatever. I'm going old school here, right? Or Neheb or whoever you play. But this is something that other new designers can use to kind of come into this. I really like this Neheb deck. This happens to be one of my favorite decks, and I want to emulate this within a cube. This is a fine example of how you can kind of use that as a core shell, like a build around, right? Do you see that from a design like leapfrogging off of something that you enjoy? You were really good, you mentioned, at the Madness deck of the time, right? That was a core.
Yeah, I think one thing that's true about this era, going back to something you said earlier, is a lot of very core fundamental Magic strategies are here. Like, oh, there's a blue-black control deck. There's a blue-white control deck. There's a blue-green tempo deck. There's a red aggro deck. There's like a black control deck. All those kind of cores are available in this cube. And there's a white weenie deck, you know? And so I think you can kind of just go off like what you already know about Magic fundamentals and what kind of strategy you enjoy playing. And then what I love is if you have played through that era, you can be like, oh man, I can't wait to go play my favorite deck again, play Blue-Green Madness or whatever. But if you didn't play through that era, you just kind of draft the strategy you know, like, oh, I bet blue-green tempo is going to work. And by just naturally putting cards together, you begin to see these strategies unfold, right? You're like, oh, well, I drafted this Wild Mongrel and I have this Arrogant Worm. Well, I can play them together. That's sick, right? If you're drafting white, you're going to end up with Rebels and some Rebel Searchers. Okay, cool. I'll end up searching for some Rebels this way. So it kind of like lets you walk down the path of stuff you already know, but then learn about what the environment was like by ending up playing some themes, because those are the cards you just naturally end up with by the structure of the cube.
Well, I was going to ask you that actually as a follow-up, but I think you kind of answered it. Have you seen anything, you got this amalgamation of cards from a time period, right? Have you seen these cards do something that they didn't do at the time, right? From having a cube, I feel like it's given you access to like, oh man, I wish I understood this tech of the time, right? Maybe you've seen some synergies that suddenly have been unveiled before you because of the cube experience.
I don't know about as many things that showed up that were available in Standard that weren't unlocked at the time. Haven't seen as much of that. What I have seen is some really cool cross-block stuff happen, because of course Standard was 2 years at the time, so not everything here was in Standard at the same time. So I was watching Zach Hill play at CubeCon, and he went turn 1 Rebel Searcher, turn 2 Standstill, and I was all like,
yeah, that's
pretty good.
That sounds
I guess your opponent's going to need to break that Standstill. And that was not available in Standard at the time. And it was really fun just like seeing that kind of stuff naturally unfold, I think.
So May's a big fan of iterations and testing, and she's got the Fey Cube. That's her world famous top of the charts kind of Cube Cobra type of thing here. Yeah. Soon to be signed by Mattel, Moto, all that, right? Yeah. Contracts are, lawyers. But May, and I want to compare you two as far as the iteration. I kind of want to do some crosstalk between you two, because I want you to kind of see where you lie with your testing validity versus, say, Gavin's with something that's time locked, right? This is time locked.
Yeah. So believe it or not, there's actually a cube that I've made that's a little bit more relevant for the conversation, and it's actually the Shadowwind cube. And my idea with it was very similar to this, where I was just like, I really just want to emulate the cards that you saw in Standard at the time during like Lorwyn and Shadowmoor blocks, and then just kind of like throw in all like the kind of good stuff cards in there, and then just kind of throw that in, which is like one of the first things that I noticed. Like the things that I did that you also did was that we broke Singleton pretty quickly, just so that way we can like see lots of copies and get like lots of redundancies for some of these major archetypes. And I think I will call it a hurdle that a lot of early cube designers and whatnot kind of struggle with, because there's this idea that, you got to have all Singleton and whatnot. But I kind of like how you kind of gave a little cherry on top by switching the printings of the extra copies. Like there's some that you have like multiple copies of the same thing, but you also like swap the printings so that we can have like different versions of it. And I really appreciate that. But
I appreciate that you appreciate that, but that's just accidental. I'm sorry. The real life cube is not like that. That's just me typing buttons on Cube Cobra, which I'm glad it has functionality to do that. But it was actually really important to me that all my cards are in the old frame and that they are from that era, so that you can really capture the feel. And about a little over half the cube is foiled right now, so I'm trying to foil the whole thing out, which is going to be tough when I get to the Richard Imports and Dark Rituals and Brainstorms and whatever fetch lands. But I'm slowly working toward that. And because
I'll
like this,
staple my heart back together. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. but because it is like this crystalline moment in time, what I think is cool about this cube is at some point I will be done with it, right? I'm still tinkering with it a little bit. I'm playtesting, I'm iterating, I'm learning. But at some point, I'll be like, this is it. It is the best version of this I can possibly make with all the cards available. It is all in foil. It is all the cards are in old card frame. It's gorgeous. And
So
that kind of gets
when you're compiling like the playtest data from this cube, one, what is like your main method of doing so? And two, what are the main things that you're looking for the data that you pick up?
Yeah. So I think like with any museum cube like this, you're going to end up, I think it is a little less replayable than other cubes, right? You can play Vintage Cube a bajillion times. You can play this cube a lot of times, but eventually you'll start to see a lot of the same archetypes repeat themselves because that's the nature of only having 4 blocks worth of sets to pull from. So most of what I'm looking for are, number one, are people having fun? Most important thing. The answer is usually yes, so hooray. Number 2, what's missing from your decks? Like, did you try and do something and you felt like you were tricked? Did you try and do something and you felt like you didn't have enough of something? Because that is something that's actually easy to modulate, right? Like, if you try drafting Astral Slide deck and you're like, this deck could just not come together, I'm like, great, I can add another Lightning Rift, I can add another bunch of cycling lands, I can do whatever to make that kind of work out. And then just number 3, of course, is game balance, because anything too strong. And so I can like pull back on like, oh, blue-green madness is too powerful, I'll drop a Wild Mongrel from the pool or anything like that. Ultimately, some things are going to be a little insular. So like, I wanted goblins to exist. It was a big part of the era. Goblins work with other goblins. That's just the nature of how it works. So you're going to have like some guy drafted all the goblins. That deck shows up sometimes. So I'm less concerned about weeding out like the on-rail stuff. And I actually mind the on-rail stuff less because it's supposed to teach you how the era worked. But I'm more interested in finding the right power level modulations to make it feel all balanced together. And then finally, the thing that I personally keep an eye out for is, are you doing something different? Right? So basically in every pod, my goal is that 5 to 6 of the decks are kind of on railsy, like, oh, you drafted an archetype that exists, and 2 to 3 of the decks are something off kilter that I haven't seen before, that is a unique combination. And, if it's a little more unique, that's great, but that's kind of what I aim for. And so far, I'm doing pretty good hitting about that mark. And I play this with a pretty wide mix of people, from newer players to older players and so on and so forth. And usually you get some mix of like, oh, I just hopped on the rails, played these 2 colors, found the card said zombie, I took the card zombie that said zombie on it. And other people who are like, all right, I first picked City of Brass, and then I'm playing 4 colors, and I have these weird synergies. So a nice mix of stuff.
I like that you mentioned like first goblins and then zombies, because I did 2 like Cube Cobra mock drafts, and that's literally the 2 archetypes that I came out with. First of all, I'm looking at goblins thinking, man, there's some awesome goblins there. I'm taking them all, and then zombies show up, and I love my zombies. So I mean, not to think that I'm always kind of an on the rails guy, but I can imagine that's got to be a fun drafting experience. I don't know, not to say that I necessarily disagree, but I feel like, at least from the list that I saw, I would have fun. As I would have all kinds of fun drafting this cube a bunch of times.
I have a follow-up. To give context to what he said, I will have fun with this. I'm a 1977 baby, right? So I'm curious, as he kind of says, I have fun with this, how is the perspective of, say, 1990s babies, right? That year, that generation, right? And they're coming into this League of Magic versus modern. What's your age span of players that have come into this environment where they're seeing stuff like protection, land destruction, stack effects, fogs even in Cube, right? And these controls include stuff like upheaval and equilibrium.
I mean, it was at CubeCon, right? So I would imagine
I want to know, like, what's the reaction of, because I'm an older gentleman, right? This stuff is like old school Magic for me, but you get a new player, and where do they stand with this, with modern Magic kind of concepts?
Well, first of all, as somebody who loved this era and was born in 1990, I personally feel affronted. Do you feel like 1990s people cannot enjoy this?
Yes. I want to know where they land. I started playing Magic in 1996, so
don't worry, I'm with you, Gavin.
But no, actually, one of the things I really enjoyed is the first time I ever drafted this cube. Actually, I finally assembled it, and I drafted it with a bunch of people that were relatively newer Magic players. Like there was one other old time player there, but the majority of them were very new. In fact, for 2 of them, it was their first time ever drafting anything. But it was just like, I finished. You know how it is. You finish the cube, and you're like, all right, who can I assemble the draft? Like as soon as possible, I want to get my draft. I'm sure we've all felt this feeling, right? And so I was like a little nervous about it, but I was like, whatever, I'll just fire it off. And not only did it go incredibly well, and people like had a fun time, but what I realized is because, simply put, older Magic tends to be a lot simpler. Like the best card, the best card in Odyssey at the time for standard was 2G make a 3/3 flashback. Like you don't, that's it. That's the whole card. There's no other game text on that. It's beautiful, and so it was actually really easy for a lot of folks to hop on in and just take cards they thought were playable. You know, a good anecdote I had is we had a cube night a few weeks ago, and we had 3 different cubes firing at once actually, which was kind of awesome. And this cube had finished its draft in 2 of the rounds by the time that one of the other cubes had finished deck building. So like that should give you an idea of like it drafts really fast, and a lot of the games tend to play not quick, but like pretty more on the straightforward side. Now, granted, the one cube that was lingering behind was like a weird combo cube, and there were a lot of strange cards in it. So, you know, whatever. It's kind of the diaspora of options. But I do want to stress that I think this is a very approachable cube, and actually like a pretty good intro to draft. Like there's a couple mechanics. The cards are not that complicated. A lot of the things tell you what to do. You get to hop on rails a little bit. And so I've actually had a lot of success playing this with less experienced drafters. And I think it's really great in that lenticular way, where if you've been playing a long time, you look at it, you enjoy it, you like internalize what a lot of these cards do, and that gives you great nostalgia. But if you are newer, you can just kind of hop in, grab a bunch of goblins, and have a great experience. And that was really moving.
I think I love, and this is why I love having people on to give perspectives outside of the stuff that we usually talk about, because that whole the time thing, right? Time is important to me. I'm busy. I've got a job. I've got a family, but I love to draft. So I understand that sitting down to play a cube is a commitment of time, just like any hobby can be. But if someone came to me and said, look, I've got this cube, it's awesome, but it's going to take 3 hours to draft. Well, maybe I don't have that time. But you sit down and say, I have got this cube. We can literally be done the draft and done all 3 rounds in like 90 minutes. How much flexibility, and like I'm thinking that's the kind of cube that has so much flexibility, just from from a time perspective, like within a group.
When I see a cube like this, you just kind of said it. You nailed it on the head there, Gavin. It's like accessibility is a huge factor for a lot of people. Yeah. And then even if we're doing veterans will lean into these ideas of like the protections and all these things I kind of babbled about, or regenerate, or whatever it might be, right? But then the new players have the option of actually learning, and these cards are so eloquently designed. I mean, you work for the company that does these things, right? And you're always forward moving, but the words have increased, the word counts have pushed forward, right? This is not a Chains of Mephistopheles conversation, right? We've gotten past that, but these cards do read well. They're almost like pauper peasant, great for bringing someone new into the fold, right? You want to bring in a commander person from their pod or whatever. This is a great way to kind of fold people in. This is what I love about this cube is it's powerful, it's intelligent, but it's also very accessible in the same sense.
Sometimes simple is just better.
It lets people sit down and just play Magic. The gathering part of Magic is what this cube does.
Well, and I want to stress too, like even though some of the cards are on the simpler side, the games are still really dynamic and deep. Like we've had some really incredible games. I don't want to downplay that, but yeah, there's this era of Magic is known for its strategic complexity, right? Like Factor of Fiction and Psychatog mirrors, like those are things people talk about now in terms of how the strategy of Magic has evolved. But those cards are not hyper complex; they just kind of play out in dynamic ways. I will say it was an issue for me at CubeCon because every round I'd finish my draft and I'd walk over to try and go watch what was happening in my cube, and like half the time the cube would just be done, and I was all like, "What do you mean? I want to go watch my cube. Why is it finished already?" But there you go.
I think the way that I like to put it is that this is a cube that allows for a large variety of skillful gameplay. So somebody who is new to the cube will have an easy time to understand what's going on. The cards are relatively simple, but a lot of the skillful gameplay comes from actually being able to utilize what cards you have access to, right? Where a lot of it's like, am I going to use this 3 mana to hold up for interaction, or am I going to use it to make my 3/3 or whatever for my turn, right? And that kind of complexity leads to people being able to have a lot of skill expression and really show off like tactical prowess and drafting prowess and their ability to actually like show their skill in an environment without solely pushing out the players who don't quite understand like the cube environment or card complexity or whatnot.
Do you think
I think that it's a really difficult thing to balance, and I think that you did a really good job with it.
Yeah, I'll ask this of all of you. Do you think that is maybe something that's emblematic of Magic in general, is that when you do have fairly, and I don't know if I don't like the word simple, even though it probably fits, right?
Elegant,
but maybe elegant, more straightforward cards, that it maybe does make the gameplay, the refinement of how strict and how accurate you need to be with your gameplay, because your choices are not quite as vast as they do when each of the cars is more modular, you know. And I love my, hey, I've got an instant with 3 different modes, or I've got a creature with ETBs and all that kind of stuff, right? But when you've got simpler cards, now the choices and the timing and the gameplay options become so critical, right? And I've experienced this with other cubes in our environment, when it's like, man, all I have to do is make one very, very minor mistake, or, you know, the timing could be a little off, and I know my opponent's going to run away with it. And I see that on the other side. I don't know. You tell me if you know, Gavin, you tell me if you agree with
Gavin,
that.
where do you land with that
where do you
opinion?
land with that from a gameplay?
To refine that, do these cards in this cube play themselves, or the players playing these cards, to kind of refine that?
Yeah, the players definitely play these cards because, I mean, for me, one of the biggest things is creature power level. And modern day creature power level is a lot different than it was back then. I think correctly, like we've moved creatures for just the wider Magic populace in general. Like we moved creatures to be stronger, have more of an individual impact, all that kind of stuff. But it's quite possible you can draft a deck these days and just like play some creatures and attack, and you're like, well, just what I drew, I don't know what to tell you, and your opponent gets stomped underfoot. I'm not saying that never happens here, but because the creatures are so much weaker and a lot more creature combat happens, and the games just tend to go a little bit longer, not in terms of time, but just in terms of turns played, you just have more chances to make decisions that really matter, right? And there's a lot of the creatures that really have these like really critical flex points, like when and how are you discarding the Wild Mongrel? How are you pumping your Basking Root Wallas? I was just Green Blue Madness examples, I guess. But what are you discarding the Waterfront Bouncer? How are you using your Psychatogs? When are you like serving in with your Goblins? How are you using your black creatures in like the zombie deck or the mono black control deck? When are you activating rebels with searchers versus casting them? Like all these things are really interesting flashpoints. And even knowing when to deploy your creatures is big. There's a lot of sweepers in the format. And so knowing when to hold them and not is really important. So, I mean, I feel that there's a lot of skill involved in this one. But, you know, obviously I'm biased.
You totally bypassed the greatest Magic card of all time. It's our friend Spirit Monger. I mean, Spirit Monger is it's Magic at its finest. This is peak Magic, folks. I love this card so much. Spirit Monger for 3 colorless and Golgari. You get a creature beast. Whenever Spirit Monger deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on Spirit Monger.
No, it's damage to a creature.
A creature. Oh, that's even weirder. But
we're
gonna let that roll. And then for 1 black, regenerate Spirit Monger. And then this is kind of the peak Magic part. Pay a green. Spirit Monger becomes the color of your choice until the end of turn. For a 6/6. Yeah, you're right. It's to a creature.
5 mana, 6/6.
The block had to occur.
Let's first start with that, right? Because
I love it.
Unheard of.
I was going to say, like, I do at least come from a time where your 2 mana 2/2s were the going rate, and your 3 mana, like I was a modern player back when you could pay 2 mana for a 3/3 in Colonian Tusker. I'm sorry, I just have to get that in there at every opportunity. But that was a massive creature for just such a small investment. So something like this, this is going to take over games for me. Like, unless you're fortunate enough to be able to remove it, and maybe they don't have the green mana to protect it because it's a destroy this creature of that color, then, you know, just this is so much fun.
As far as curation, as far as this cube, this is old school Magic that you're kind of running here, at least for us. This is the Magic I love. But when you do Spirit Monger becomes the color of your choice until the end of the turn, is that applicable? Did you make sure that that's a design trait within this cube? Is this Magic threatening that?
You know, that was always kind of a funny ability, but there's some cards, like some removal spells, that care about what color the creature is or what have you. So it can matter a little bit. You're going to activate the regeneration a lot more on that card, though. But there's a little bit of that can matter.
So for me, I'm definitely more in the boat of, ooh, there's a Psychatog in here. And I do love me some Psychatog.
Yeah.
So,
we just had a huge Psychatog outcry in our little private Discord about somebody cutting that from their peasant cube named Sandwich. And we were like, he's like, it's not good enough anymore. I'm like, Psychatog is such an amazing Magic card.
I'm going to need to see the numbers on that. I don't know if I can agree. I'm sorry. I don't know.
But my eye was actually caught by a particular card in your cube, Wildfire. Has anybody actually made the Wildfire deck in here?
Oh, yeah.
And has it worked?
Wildfires have happened. There's many lands have been destroyed. I will say that. Many lands have died in this cube. Upheaval, of course, is the more common way to reset the board. Definitely some Upheaval Psychatog games have happened. That's how I lost the finals of the last time I played this cube. Cedric Phillips got me with that. But the Wildfire deck, you can totally draft it. There's also Stone Rain, Pillage. Like there are ways to blow up lands in this cube. That was a thing that happens in the era. And look, if you get a little greedy on your mana, I tell everyone a few things at the beginning of the cube before we start. There's 3 things I tell everybody. They are the following. They are, number 1, if you played back then, damage does not use the stack. We're using modern day rules. I've debated this back and forth, but I think I've come down on the side of just making Magic work like it is today. I don't want to explain how this works every single time, but that's modular. Number 2, the creatures are bad. I know that you probably hear that they're bad and you think that they're bad. They are worse than you remember. They're even worse than you think they are. You're going to have to accept that as you select your cards. And then number 3 is the mana is bad. The mana back in the day was just not good. In fact, it's probably better in this cube than back in Constructed in the day, just based on the cards, based on the numbers of the cards that are here. But like, keep in mind that a deck that top-aided Worlds was like 11 islands, 8 forest, 4 Yavimaya coast. That was it. That's how it was built. So there is.
Your options for color is ping lands and filter lands, right?
Yeah, pain lands and filter lands. That's it. Like even the fetch lands, they're only getting basics.
Right. The fetch lands only get basics. Pain lands, filter lands. You don't have a lot. They don't have a lot to work with. So there's a lot of like a well-timed pillage will get you. I mean, you've got Grand Coliseum, you've got Croson Verge, you've got City of Brass. So you do have a few other options, but a pillage can really, really, really throw a wrench in the works.
Has anybody ever done a Icy Manipulator into your City of Brass in this cube? Because that is the play.
Oh, man. Icy is not in here because it wasn't legal at the time. They got reprinted in Mirrodin.
So did you ever deal with like post-CubeCon?
You can, however, Rich and import their City of Brass.
Oh, yeah, you can do that. Have you done any kind of like post-CubeCon or with your drafts? Have you seen any decks that dominate? Are they in line with what would have happened during this time period? Certain decks are dominant. You mentioned the Madness deck, for example, as like the showcase that you built this cube around. I mean, have these decks actually continue to kind of be the villain in the story, or is it just free for all on like archetypes?
I think the strongest decks are, in my opinion, are Mono Red Goblins and Blue Green Madness. But those are decks that's also very easy to hate cards from. And the one thing that's important to me in my cubes is that not all the cards are in every cube, in every draft, right? So the cube is larger than the draft size. So your cards aren't always going to be there for them. And while those decks are strong when they come together, if they don't, your deck ends up really underpowered. So I've seen a pretty good mix of stuff finishing and doing well. I've seen control decks, aggro decks, all that kind of stuff. Even like some Rising Waters, Stasis-y stuff.
Gavin, as we kind of, we know you're a busy individual. You got things to do, right? You're hopping around the globe as we speak, probably. But my question for you is there any advice that you'd give to new cube curators or designers, new or veteran, or any kind of time, the reason why they want to time lock a period in Magic and what that could be like, what joy that can bring? Anything you can offer, actually, because you're a professional designer, that you can give to our listeners to help them give a takeaway from this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think my number one thing with Cube, we've seen so much innovation in Cube in the past 5 years. And one thing that I really found a lot of joy to tie it all back with this Cube is taking an era of Magic or a thing about Magic that I really enjoyed and letting it be an environment to show other people. Like the way I see, like I'll juxtapose Commander and Cube for a second. When you play Commander, you're sitting down and you are controlling one quadrant of the experience, right? You have your cool deck that you built that shows off a thing that you really care about, and you just show that off to people, right? And you show off your little world, and every other player shows off their world, whatever. Cube is that, but taken all the way. I'm not just showing you off my sliver of the world by playing it. We are all entering into this world, right? We are all entering this together. And so when you draft this cube, my cube, it's like you're going back in time. Like we are all living through this era together, right? We are all stepping into this room where this is the time period that we're playing in. In fact, when I explain the cube, I always say, like, imagine for a second, it's the year 2003. And, I list off some bands that were big.
Britney's on the radio.
So exactly, right? You don't have a smartphone yet, all that kind of stuff. And so, you read about these decks in Sideboard magazine. And so I encourage you, the players, to figure out, like, what is the thing you want people to live in? And whether that's a time period, a style of gameplay, just a card that you enjoy, maybe everyone gets access to, whatever. Like, figure out what the thing is you want people to live in, because to me, that is Cube. It's people coming and living in your world for 90 minutes, and they fall in love with your world, and they live there for 90 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long your cube takes, I guess. And build them a cool one. Build them a cool world to live in, because I want to come check your world out.
That's beautiful.
Gavin, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you joining us. It's been a real honor. Could you tell the listeners how they might communicate you in some like non-doxing format? That'd be great.
Yeah, well, the easiest way is just Google my name and find me wherever I'm at. But at Gavin Verhey on any social media network will get me there. We're doing a lot on Instagram recently. But of course, X and Bluesky and all that stuff. You can also find me on YouTube at Good Morning Magic, where I post all about designing magic behind the scenes.
And then one more. We're actually, Prof, if you're listening, we want you to be a guest on the show. We've already had Pleasant Kenobi. And we're now talking to Gavin. We would love to talk to Professor.
We're in our guest phase.
We're
right
kind of our
now.
guest phase. We're in our guest phase here, and Morrow, if you listen, Gavin's he's okay. He's great. He's doing a good job. But we appreciate you coming on, man.
Just hit him with the he's okay. All right,
Yeah.
Gavin,
Okay.
I love
I
you
know.
being here.
I know these things.
Love to have you on the show too. Yes. P.S. But thank you so much for giving us your time. And we actually want to have you back on again. I hope you've enjoyed this experience, because the one that I've been dying to talk to you about is your evolution of your commander-centric design that you've been doing. Because we've got, since the last time we talked to you, there's a lot more cards that have come out that you can now openly speak about. So I feel like there's some design conversations there too. But Gavin, thank you.
Yeah,
It's always a blessing to have you on. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Good time.
I just say thank you all so much for listening today, and go out there and enjoy Cube. I'll see y'all at CubeCon, if not sooner.
Nice.
And we're moving to the socials.
As always, I want to give a huge shout out thanks to our Patreons. Come hang out and check us out. Patreon.com/UberCube. Get in on the conversation at Facebook.com/groups/MTGCube. Lots of cool conversation going on there. We at 50,000 members yet? 40,000?
50,001.
50,001.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
Lots
actually,
of,
no,
lots...
it's 50,001 plus 5. I did use saw in half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, congratulations. Yeah. I'm sorry. Whoever unfortunately got sawed in half, hopefully you had some enter the battlefield to make it worthwhile.
They made 2 of them.
As always, on the socials, ubercubemtgpodcast.bsky.social. You can find us at Twitter at ubercubemtgpod. If you've got a longer question or comment about this episode or any episode, then you can reach us at ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com. Come hang out with us on our Discord. Lots of cool combos.
And then other than that, we're going to say the thing that we always say here at UberCube is Happy
Cubing!